Welcome back to the Folker Lab podcast, where we talk intelligence, strategy, leadership, and discernment. If you've been following along, episode 5 was about the big strategy wake-up call, moving from tactics guy to actual strategist, thanks in part to John Warden's Prometheus Academy and some humbling time in the Pentagon's checkmate office. Episode 6 zoomed in on the first big question of strategy. Where do you intend to be? We talked about the future picture, painting a concrete, high-resolution image of what winning looks like a few years from now. So you're not just doing more stuff faster in the wrong direction. Today, in episode 7, we're going after the second question. What systems need to change? This is the part where a lot of strategies die. The future picture is fun. It's vision. It's imagination. It's what if. But sooner or later, you have to look at your world and ask, okay, if that's the future, what in this system has to change? And what have we been frantically polishing that doesn't matter at all? So this episode is about seeing your world as a system, not a pile of problems, and figuring out which parts of that system need to change to make your future picture real. And don't worry, we'll keep it practical, a little bit irreverent, and highly applicable whether your system is a joint task force, a business, a church, or your slightly chaotic family calendar. Let's get into it. I want to start with a confession. For a big chunk of my career, if you'd asked me, what system are you operating in? I would have said, the Air Force, or maybe the Intel community. Then I'd have quickly changed the subject back to something respectable, like tactics. System sounded like one of those words people use in PowerPoint when they don't know what they're talking about. Then I spent time with Warden and later with some very smart strategists who kept insisting, you're never dealing with isolated problems. You're always dealing with a system. You can ignore it, but it won't ignore you. That started to click when I noticed this pattern. Every time we solved the obvious problem, it came back wearing a different hat. We'd fix a process, and a month later, the same delay showed up in a different part of the workflow. We'd coach an individual, and then watch another person make the exact same mistake. We'd tweak a policy, and the behavior it was supposed to fix just moved sideways. It's like whack-a-mole. The moles are not the problem. The game is the problem. That's what a system is. All the pieces, all the relationships, all the incentives and habits and structures that generate the behavior you're seeing. If you don't change the system changes you. Warden's 5 rings model is his way of forcing you to think in systems. You've probably seen the image, 5 concentric rings. Leadership in the center, then system essentials, things like energy, logistics, key processes, then infrastructure, roads, networks, facilities, then population, and finally, on the outer ring, the fielded forces. His original context was war, how to think about an adversary as a living, interconnected organism instead of a list of targets. But here's the trick. You can steal that idea for almost any context. Imagine your organization or your mission or even your own life as a 5 rings diagram. At the center is leadership. Who's making decisions and setting direction? One ring out are the essentials that keep the thing alive and functioning: money, information flows, core processes. One more ring, and you're at infrastructure, the tools, platforms, policies, buildings, tech. Then the population, the people who live in or are affected by the system, staff, customers, congregation, and family. And finally, the fielded forces, the agents, sales force, frontline workers who produce the visible outputs, products, reports, operations, events. Most of us spend our time on that outer ring because that's where the noise is. That's where the emails come from. That's what the commander or the boss or the pastor sees. But if your future picture says, 3 years from now, we're doing X very differently, you almost never get there by tinkering only with the outer ring. Something in the inner rings has to change. Maybe it's how leadership thinks and decides. Maybe it's the way information moves. Maybe it's the incentives baked into a process. Maybe it's the infrastructure that makes the current behavior the path of least resistance. Strategy development at this stage is basically you saying, given the future we want, what in these rings can't stay the way it is? Let me give you a simple example. I worked with a unit that was drowning in taskings. Great people, smart analysts, everyone exhausted. The future picture the commander wanted sounded something like, we're not just reacting, we're actually shaping decisions. We're doing fewer, better products that matter more. At first, all the energy went into the fielded forces ring, trying to make products more efficient, templates, checklists, shortcuts. That helped a little, but not much. When we stepped back and looked at the system, a different picture emerged. Leadership, without really meaning to, had created a culture where saying no to any tasker was treated as disloyalty. System essentials, things like the tasking process and the prioritization rules, were basically everything is important. Infrastructure included about 7 different places where requests could enter the system, most of them invisible to anyone trying to prioritize. Population, the analysts, had learned that the safest move was to say yes to everything and work longer. And that system, the outer ring behavior, too many products, not enough thinking, was inevitable. The question, what systems need to change, turned into specifics. We need to change how leadership signals priorities and what no looks like. We need to change the tasking and intake process so that there's one front door. We need to change the metrics we care about so impact counts more than volume. Those are system changes. Once you start moving those, outer ring behavior starts to shift almost on its own. Same thing happens in business. You can yell at salespeople to sell smarter, or you can realize the compensation system rewards quick, shallow deals over long-term relationships. You can send people to customer service training, or you can notice your infrastructure makes it nearly impossible to help the customer without violating some internal rule. If the system is perfectly designed to get the results you're currently seeing, you have to redesign the system. Warden pushes this further with the idea of centers of gravity. In his language, a center of gravity is a part of the system where, if you change it, a disproportionate amount of the system has to respond. It's a hub, a high leverage node. Not every system change is equally strategic. Rewriting a form probably isn't a center of gravity. Changing who approves that form might be. Buying a new tool is usually not a center of gravity. Changing the process that decides which tools you buy and why might be. In a church, adding another program is not a center of gravity. Changing how you decide what success looks like probably is. So when you ask, what systems need to change, the better version of that question is, what few parts of this system, if we change them, would force everything else to adjust? Those are your centers of gravity. And here's where this gets uncomfortable. A lot of centers of gravity live in the inner rings: leadership, system essentials, culture, the stuff that's hardest to move and most sacred to the organization. It's fun to talk about changing the outer ring. It's emotionally expensive to talk about changing the inner rings. That's why so many strategies stay safely in the land of more training, more comms, more effort, instead of we're going to change who decides, how we decide, and what we reward. Let's make this personal for a minute, because systems aren't just organizational. Think about your own life as a 5-ring system. At the center is what really leads you, your deepest commitments, your actual priorities, not the ones you put on LinkedIn. Your system essentials are things like your sleep, your schedule, your relationships, your habits of thought. Your infrastructure is your environment, the apps on your phone, the way your workspace is set up, the routines you fall into without thinking. Your population is the people you spend time with and the communities you're part of. Your fielded forces are the visible outputs, your work, your words, your behaviors. If your personal future picture says, 3 years from now, I want to be more present with my family, less reactive at work, more grounded in my faith, you are not going to get there by occasionally downloading a mindfulness app and feeling guilty. You're going to have to change some systems. Maybe your leadership ring, the thing that quietly leads you, is career ambition or fear of missing out. That will probably have to change. Maybe your system essentials, your sleep, your margin, your time with people who tell you the truth are currently non-existent. That has to change. Maybe your infrastructure, your phone on your nightstand, your email notifications, your social media habits is designed to keep you distracted and anxious. That definitely has to change. If you look at your days and think, why am I always tired and scattered? The answer usually isn't because I'm a terrible person. It's because my system is perfectly designed to produce tired and scattered. What systems need to change? That's not a rhetorical question. It's the heart of strategic personal growth. So how do you start answering that question without needing a week-long offsite, a whiteboard wall, and a consultant? Here's a simple approach you can use this week, whether the system you care about is your shop, your team, your organization, or your own life. First, take the future picture you sketched after episode 6. If you didn't sketch one, just imagine a specific part of your world and ask, if this were going really well in 3 years, what would be true that isn't true today? Write down a few concrete sentences. Then, imagine that 5 rings diagram for that domain. Leadership in the middle, system essentials, infrastructure, population, fielded forces. For each ring, ask, if that future picture is true, what here has to be different? Don't overthink it. Just let yourself write. If your future picture is about a better analytics shop, maybe leadership has to stop rewarding volume and start rewarding insight. System essentials, like tasking processes and feedback loops, have to become more disciplined and transparent. Infrastructure, like tools and knowledge management, has to support deep thinking, not just faster cut and paste. The population, the analyst, may need different training and a different set of expectations. The fielded forces, the products, will look very different. Fewer, clearer, more tied to decisions. Once you've done that, circle the things that feel like centers of gravity, the high leverage nodes. Those are the systems that need to change first. You don't have to fix everything at once, but you do have to stop pretending that tweaking the outer ring will magically produce a different future picture, while the inner rings remain untouched. As we wrap up, let me bring this back to the big picture. Episode 5 was the strategy wake-up call. Tactics can't save bad strategy. Episode 6 gave you the first anchor question. Where do you intend to be? The future picture. Episode 7 is the second anchor. What systems need to change? The 5 rings view, the centers of gravity, the admission that your current system is perfectly tuned to give you your current results. In the next strategy episode, we'll go deeper into how you design operations against those centers of gravity, parallel versus serial efforts, sequencing, and how not to blow yourself up while you're changing the system. But for this week, here's your homework. Whether you're a commander, a manager, a minister, or just someone who feels like life is happening to you a little too much, pick one domain, your team, your organization, or your own life. Write a short future picture for 3 years out. Then ask, if that becomes real, what in this system will have to be different? And keep asking until something in the inner rings makes you a little uncomfortable. That's probably where you need to start. Thanks for spending this time with me on the Folker Lab podcast. If this episode made you even a little more suspicious of the sentence, we just need to work harder, then the system has already started to change.